What I will say is that it appears that some natural substances like green tea and curcumin and quercetin have the ability to interfere or inhibit the virus from spreading and replicating. People are taking too long to just take action. And so the one thing I would say is, you can go to our website. We got all kinds of free ebooks. We got all kinds of free videos and podcasts that you can listen to. And you could schedule a free talk with a doctor. So you don't have to, try to figure it out on your own. You can at least get some competent advice. We can't just treat you from a phone call, but we can at least say, hey, here's how it should look for you to get better going forward. And at least, you're getting steered in the right direction as opposed to just reading something on the internet and then trying to buy that product without even knowing if it'll help. And that's just that, the domain is causenta.com. That's causenta.com. And if you just scroll to the bottom, there's a form to schedule a free consult. So I'm asked all the time by patients, what's the difference between personalized medicine and traditional medicine? And in traditional medicine, there's a singular approach. So you have cancer A, and for cancer A, here is the standard of care treatment. And after you go through the standard of care treatment and it doesn't work, typically there's not a plan B. There's not another option. So then patients are told, hey, there's nothing else that can be done. And so then they're convinced that, hey, there's no hope and we can't do anything else. Now I want to contrast that in a personalized approach that we have at Causenta. We're going to measure all kinds of details within your body. And we're going to find lots of areas that we can actually improve your health. And then indirectly, by improving those areas, we're going to help you do a better job at fighting cancer. So where someone else would say, hey, there's nothing that could be done, we're going to say, hey, there's lots of opportunity here to improve your health and make sure that you have a better quality of life so that you're able to function and live life under your own terms and not just waste away in a bed in hospice somewhere and watch everything go by you as time passes on. So if you or a loved one has been diagnosed with cancer and you're looking to get help, I strongly encourage you to go to causenta.com and fill out the form at the bottom of the page and find out for yourself how we can help you.
Welcome to the Dr. Tom Show. Welcome, everybody. Hi, Dr. Tom. We are doing a taping and a live broadcast of our taping of the Dr. Tom podcast, Ask Dr. Tom. And we do this every week, typically on Thursdays, with Dr. Tom. Dr. Thomas Incledon is the founder and CEO of Causenta Wellness and the Causenta Cancer Treatment Center in Scottsdale, Arizona. From working with NFL, MLB, MMA, world-class athletes, and even the White House, Dr. Tom's reputation of personalized medicine and cutting-edge technologies have put him on the map for caring for some of the most powerful people in the world, making him one of the most sought-after healthcare professionals of our time. And he's coming to us live from the Dr. Tom studios out there in beautiful Scottsdale, Arizona. Hello, Mr. Dr. Tom. I don't know why I did that, Mr. Doctor. But hello, sir. How are you?
Good morning. How's it going for you?
Doing well. Things are, the weather here has been beautiful, not quite Arizona beautiful, but as beautiful as it can get. How is everything there in your neck of the woods?
It's been nice. It actually was a bit of a storm, and the storm reduced the temperature by almost 40 degrees. So it's like a brief spell of a little bit cooler weather. I mean, it's still hot. No matter what temperature it is, it's hot here. But, our summers is like other people's winters. The winter in most places you stay indoors, and here in the summers we stay indoors. Same type of thing.
We're going to be talking today about some heavy topics and sharing with you some practical strategies and and information that you may not necessarily see on the internet. And some of it's going to be so powerful, you're going to say to yourself, I want a copy of this. I want to be able to get to this. I want to hear it. I want to watch it. And so to get access to other episodes of Ask Dr. Tom or the Rumor Has It series, where we talk about the things that your family has been saying they think are true, but we ask Dr. Tom, is this really the case? Any copies and episodes that you'd like to sort of watch and listen to later, you can get on demand, and we can send those to you if you just text the word health to 72000 from your mobile phone. If you're in the United States, Canada, you can text the word health to 72000. That's the word health to 72000. And if you're outside the U.S., or the family member you want to help is outside the U.S., you text the word health to +1 315 930 0300, and we will put that on the screen for you. Today we're going to be talking about some specific cancers. We've been going through in the Ask Dr. Tom show all of the top 20 really dangerous cancers that Dr. Tom has been helping to rid people of and fight. You know, their mission over there at Causenta is to kill cancer once and for all with minimal side effects. And so today we're going to be diving in to two really terrible killer cancers. The first one we're going to talk about with Dr. Tom is colon cancer. And so I want to start, Dr. Tom, can you share with everybody watching and everybody listening, what are the symptoms of colon cancer, the things that people should be watching for before they even know they might have a problem?
Sure. So the symptoms for colon cancer are sometimes kind of benign or common. And what I mean by that is you may get abdominal pain, you may get gas or bloating, there may even be blood in the stool, but it may not be readily noticeable. So a lot of those early symptoms, most people they might think it's, I ate something wrong or it's something temporary. They may not think of it as, hey, this is something more serious. So because of that, there's a lot of recommendations that are made by different cancer groups on, how to reduce your risk for colon cancer. What I will share with people is that it's one of the most common cancers that we see patients having that come to our facility. The vast majority are men. We do see women with colon cancer. Excuse me. And in almost every case, though, most people would say, I led a pretty healthy lifestyle, and yet I still got colon cancer. And then we have to remind people that you can't feel cancer cells growing. So it doesn't matter the type of cancer. One of the single best things to do is to make sure you're doing some sort of regular checkup or assessment, so that way you minimize the likelihood it gets to be a more advanced condition.
We're talking with Dr. Tom, and this is the Ask Dr. Tom show. You can download episodes and even subscribe so it comes right to your phone at askdrtom.com. And today's topic is colon cancer. We're talking with Dr. Tom from the Causenta Cancer Treatment Facility, and their mission over there at Causenta in Scottsdale, Arizona, is to kill cancer once and for all with minimal side effects. One of the best ways to kill cancer is never to get it in the first place. You just mentioned some of the symptoms, and the symptoms of colon cancer, as you point out, like many symptoms, are common, and they're not necessarily representative of just cancer. They could be representative of many things. We just ate some bad food. I've heard you say it before, but I want everyone else to hear it. What are the things that people can and should do on a regular basis, on an everyday basis, to reduce their risks of things like colon cancer?
So one of the things that you can do is to make sure you eat a wide variety of colorful fruits and vegetables to reduce the risk for colon cancer, because there's a lot of chemicals that nature has produced. We call them phytonutrients, and those phytonutrients reduce the risk for all kinds of disease, not just colon cancer, but other types of cancers and other types of disease as well. A second thing that we've said many times, but you're never going to hear me say it enough, is that make sure you're getting enough sleep. We know that sleep is a risk factor for all kinds of disease, meaning if you don't get enough or if it's inadequate, your likelihood of it leading to problems later on in life goes up dramatically. There's other things like different micronutrients that are linked. So when they are low, the risk for colon cancer grows up. We'll go over some of them, in a later topic, and so I'll save that information for then. And one other thing that I didn't really talk about much in many other podcasts is how important fiber is for people. The muscles that make up the esophagus, the stomach, the small intestine, the large intestine, you could think of those muscles need something to work with in order to move the bulk of the food down the digestive tract. And for people that eat, let's say, only meat and not enough fiber, they have minimal bulk or residue, so as a result, they have to strain much harder in order to go to the bathroom. So it ties back into eating lots of fruits and vegetables, provide natural sources of fiber to kind of keep the digestive tract, looking clean and pretty on the inside, if you will.
Dr. Tom's solution, one of the things that we all can do that he mentions repeatedly is this concept of eating a wide variety of colorful foods and the right kinds of foods. There is a chart that Dr. Tom and Causenta have put together. It's one of the most powerful tools I've seen. I think everybody should have a copy of this. And if you'd like a copy of the food chart that you can use to help you pick the right foods and make sure you are eating a wide variety of the different colors and the different sort of glycemic indexes and micronutrients and those things, make sure you text the word health to 72,000. Text the word health to 72000 if you're in the United States and Canada. If you're outside the U.S. and Canada, +1 315 930 0300, and we'll find a way to make sure we get that chart into your hands. We're talking with Dr. Tom. This is Ask Dr. Tom with Dr. Thomas Inclinon, and we're talking today about colon cancer. We talked about the symptoms. We just talked about a little bit of prevention. Dr. Tom, what is going on in the world of colon cancer screening with regard to people in the United States and Canada? What are the measures and what are the recommendations for screening because I hear you say early detection is key. So how does that work?
Sure. So current guidelines for screening from the American Cancer Society for colon cancer would be to get regular colonoscopies, probably starting at the age of 45 to 50. And I say probably because we've seen lots of people who they come in and they say, my grandmother or grandfather had colon cancer, and then my mother or father had colon cancer, and now they have colon cancer. So if, while the guidelines are basically to get routine screening starting around the age of 45, what I would share, like a further refinement I would share with people, is that I've seen people go from no evidence of cancer to stage 4 advanced cancers in less than a year. So if I was someone, let's say if 3 generations or 2 generations in my family had colon cancer, I would want to be a little bit more preventative oriented, and I would probably try to get a colonoscopy every year. Now, the trouble most people have, though, is that their insurance may not cover it every year. So they may have to find that balance between what they can afford to pay for and then the safety, of or reduction of risk that comes from doing that. Outside of that, as long as they're, part of what should be happening during that colonoscopy is there should be some routine blood work to make sure that they're getting a CBC, a CMP, and some different cancer antigens to make sure that there's not changes in their blood that are not favorable to their health. So if you kind of combine that, it'll dramatically reduce the likelihood that something will blindside you. One other thing that I would add to that is there's all kinds of newer testing technologies that right now the American Cancer Society doesn't really have a position on. Because it's so new, there's not enough data yet to say, hey, as a government organization, we recommend doing it or not doing it. My thoughts personally is that I think there's some clinical utility for some of this, meaning that some of these tests will tell people, hey, there is a small amount of cancer in your body, and then at least you could have a baseline to see, okay, in 6 months, has it increased or not? They can measure things in the blood now that is so small you won't see it on a PET scan or a CT scan or a colonoscopy or an MRI. Now, some of that stuff may never materialize to a full-blown cancer, but some of it will. So it depends on, part of it is you get the information and then you figure out with a competent professional how to use that information to make the best possible decision to save your life, ultimately, is what it comes down to.
We're talking with Dr. Thomas Incledon, and this is Ask Dr. Tom. Today's topic is colon cancer. It's a pretty heavy topic, but it's one of those topics where it's better to talk about it, just like early detection is key. It's better to prevent it by talking about the right foods to eat. If you want a copy of this show or any of these videos and you'd like to make sure that you get it for loved ones, well, one thing you could do for sure is if you're seeing this on Facebook or anywhere else, you can share it, tag the person that you know and love in the comments. But you can get access to other podcasts or submit your questions to Dr. Tom. Just text the word health to 72,000. That's the word health with the number 72,000 if you're in the U.S. and Canada. If you're outside the U.S. and Canada, you can put, we have the number below on the screen, plus 315-930-0300. We're talking specifically about colon cancer, and this is... before we began the broadcast here, what we do is we broadcast live while we're taping these videos and these podcasts for future publishing. And Dr. Tom and I were talking about the fact that there is such a wealth of information on the internet, but it's typically dominated by marketers. And when you go and you Google something, you don't necessarily find the best medical information. Oftentimes you find the best selling information. And so Dr. Tom knows how to search for the right information if he doesn't have the information top of mind. He's got some resources. But one question about colon cancer, as you were talking about early detection and screening, came to my mind, and I know that you may have some input, and even if you don't, you can find it. I read some statistic about the incidence of hemorrhoids, and something along the lines of like 7 out of 10 adults have some form of hemorrhoids, men and women, obviously women who have given childbirth and men who have lifted things and whatever. And I thought, wow, that's significant. I wonder if there is a correlation, because that could obstruct that pathway in your digestive and bowel system. Is there a higher risk for people, these 70% of Americans that are going through hemorrhoids, is there a higher risk for them to have colon cancer?
So since you brought up that the ability to search and find information, what I'd like to do is maybe demonstrate that. Let's say you hit me with something I never heard of in my life. I don't even know how to spell the word, right? So it's so rare, unique of a topic. What I could do is I'm using there's a laptop here. I'm connected to a website called PubMed, PubMed.com. And then what I would do is, I'm just going to load it up right now. As it loads up, I would simply type in hemorrhoids and then risk of colon cancer.
Anybody can access this website, not just you.
Right, as long as you have an internet, it's free, it's really available for everyone. And I'll just kind of give you so there's, so the cool part about it is I spelled a word wrong because I have big fingers. And so what it did is it automatically corrects the spelling of the word for me. And then I could use what they have, or I could just click on to the actually correctly spelled word. And then I get a whole bunch of studies that then say, hey, here's stuff that's specific. So I got about 35 studies here. And then I could read through these studies to see, hey, are hemorrhoids linked to an increased risk of colon cancer? And most of the data looks at that hemorrhoids can oftentimes be caused by other things in life. So for example, weightlifters that are exercising in a gym that have a belt on too tight and then are straining while they lift, the increased abdominal pelvic pressure can cause hemorrhoids. People that have poor fiber in their diet that are straining to go to the bathroom, that can cause hemorrhoids. And there's a number of inflammatory conditions. Now, generally speaking, we would say any damage to the lining of the digestive tract that does not get attention, meaning doesn't get treated, because the lining of the digestive tract is already a naturally high turnover tissue, it increases the likelihood that you could get hemorrhoids at some point. I should say, I'm sorry, if you have damage to the lining of the digestive tract, it could increase the likelihood that you get colon cancer at some point. Now, when you look at studies on specifically hemorrhoids, a lot of this data is about specific groups from around the world, and those specific groups may have been taking a medication like an opioid or some other substance. So it's not as clean or as simple, does one thing cause the other, because there could be another variable impacting that. So, so the way I would kind of translate it practically is hemorrhoids are a concern and they should be treated, because if left untreated, it can only create more problems later on. So sort of my safe or balanced or neutral answer would be figure out what's causing the hemorrhoids and address it. And sometimes it may be a lifestyle, so powerlifters that are squatting or deadlifting very heavy with a thick belt, and they're increasing the intra-abdominal pressure, that pressure builds up inside the body, and it does affect the blood vessels throughout the digestive tract.
We're talking with Dr. Tom. This is Ask Dr. Tom with Dr. Thomas Incledon. He's the founder and CEO of Causenta Wellness and the Causenta Cancer Treatment Center in Scottsdale, Arizona. From working with NFL, MLB, MMA, world-class athletes, and even the White House, his reputation of personalized medicine and cutting-edge technologies have put him on the map for caring for some of the most powerful people in the world, making him one of the most sought-after healthcare professionals of our time. And he's coming to us from the Causenta Cancer Treatment Studios in Scottsdale, Arizona. If you want to get access to any of these shows, any of this information, or get a question into Dr. Tom, you can do that by texting the word health to 72000. That's the word health to the number 72000. And we're talking today specifically about colon cancer. And we've covered some symptoms. We've covered early detection. We talked about some other, things like hemorrhoids and their relation to colon cancer. How about effective natural alternatives to colon cancer treatment? Is there anything out there that is, and I'm going to use my rock and roll, it's natural?
So I get asked this all the time. So are there natural options for treatment for, let's say, fill in the blank on a cancer, so in this case, colon cancer? So it depends on how you define, what your outcome is, right? So what I typically see is people will say, hey, I took this product that I could buy in any, supermarket or vitamin mineral store or supplement shop or off the internet, and it really worked. And I said, that's great, that's fantastic. I'm happy that the product worked for you. But then I ask them, how did you evaluate that it worked? Do you have a PET scan? Do you have any lab tests? Do you have anything that shows something went down or something is gone? And in almost every single case, what I hear is, no, I just feel better. And then when I ask them, well, explain the logic to me. So you didn't feel the cancer growing. You have proof that there's cancer there. And now you do something, you feel like you have more energy and you feel healthier. So why not get a follow-up test to see if the tumor is gone or if the cancer is gone in the body? And I get, answers that indicate to me there may be some fear of finding out the truth, as opposed to your goal should be always get facts, because from the facts you can then evaluate things accordingly. I could tell you from observation that I believe there are people that can respond to natural therapies. Natural therapies might things like, I would say a combination of green tea and red pepper, maybe various combinations of vitamin C and vitamin K3. There's different cocktails that we put together for patients that involve either supplements or over-the-counter medications like they can commonly get for $2 a month or something inexpensive like that. But we're assessing the patients and then we're verifying that these strategies are working for them. I will say though, for the majority of people, I don't see natural strategies by themselves working. I see natural strategies complementing other therapies and getting really, really good results, meaning no evidence of disease quickly. So if someone said, hey, I'm only going to do something natural, I would say, okay, let's test you and figure out a way to make sure you're doing the right thing. If someone said to me, hey, I want to get rid of this cancer as quickly as possible, then I would say, okay, that's a better option because now we have more resources and tools to utilize to help you. And one thing I would caution people is don't go to a center with your plan figured out already. Go to a center and have them explain to you how they're going to find the right plan or treatment for you. We already know one-size-fits-all models do not work. So if you go into a cancer treatment center and they already got drugs or supplements picked out for you without testing you, that's a red flag that it's probably not the best solution for you.
Okay, good answer. That's why we asked Dr. Tom. Dr. Thomas Incledon is the founder and CEO of Causenta Wellness and the Causenta Cancer Treatment Center in Scottsdale, Arizona. That's where he is. And today we're talking about colon cancer. There's going to be questions that you have, and there are going to be things that you want to know or listen to again. And if you want a copy of this episode or any other episodes, just text. We're going to test your texting. Text the word health to 72,000. That's health to the number 72000. Outside the United States and Canada, you can text the word health to plus 315-930-0300. You can always go to askdrtom.com and subscribe to the podcast. And one of the things that we like to do on the Ask Dr. Tom show is jump into some questions that you've submitted or that have come up in your travels in like regular life for regular people. Sometimes these questions are embarrassing because they're just like something you heard from an aunt or an uncle. There's no reason to be embarrassed. In fact, it's better to find out the answer. And we call this segment Rumor Has It. So rather than asking Dr. Google and going to the internet and trying to figure out the answer and getting more confused, why not ask Dr. Tom about that rumor? And so the first rumor has it we have for this taping today is it true, Dr. Tom, is it true that vitamin D may lower the risk of colorectal cancer?
Okay, so can vitamin D reduce the risk of colorectal cancer or colorectal carcinoma? And I would say yes. I would say that vitamin D has the ability to reduce the risk for pretty much all cancers. Vitamin D is one of those substances that is involved in numerous pathways in the human body. It functions to help build immune function. It functions to help with bones and hormones and all kinds of other things that impact our health. So the simple answer is yes. What I would tell you though is if you wanted more details, we can actually test people to see if they have a mutation in their vitamin D receptor. And then from that testing, we could tell them, do they need more vitamin D than we would normally recommend to most people because it doesn't bond efficiently, meaning they take vitamin D and it goes from their digestive tract to their blood and then from their blood into different tissues, but it doesn't attach to the receptors as quickly or as well as it should. So then they're going to need more vitamin D in order to get the same results as other people.
On the note of vitamin D, where this is a rumor has it, and so I'm just going to interject with an add-on question. If you're not taking vitamin D, where are you getting your vitamin D from typically, or where should you be naturally getting it from?
So if you're not taking vitamin D, the way you would get it naturally, primarily two ways, I guess. The first one would be exposure to sunlight. And the idea though is your skin has to have direct sunlight to it. So depending where you live, certain times of the year, so for example, if it's really cold out, most people are going to be bundled up or covered with clothing. So when they go outside, there'll be minimal sunlight hitting their skin. If it's too hot out, people won't go outside at all. So even though it's really sunny, and they don't have much clothing on, they're still not going to get the exposure they need. And that exposure time is probably around 15 to 30 minutes. But the thing to point out is that sunlight helps you make the first form of vitamin D in the skin. The body still has to convert that initial form to other forms of vitamin D. And the best form in the end, you want the 125 dihydroxy vitamin D3. And the reason why I say that is, let's say if you're low in some minerals, and you're low then in producing the enzymes that you need to make the chemical conversion of the skin-produced vitamin D, you may not be able to go the full way to the more advanced vitamin D3 that you need for health reasons. So you need more than just sunlight. You also need micronutrients to be present in the body so that you could do the whole chemical reaction and make the really good stuff. And then the other way you would get your vitamin D3 or vitamin D would be from eating foods that contain vitamin D. And what I often tell people when they'll say, hey, what should I eat? What I've kind of, like as far as vitamin D foods or any other nutrient, over the years what I find is that someone will say, what food should I eat? And I'll name that food. Doesn't matter the food, but randomly say something that produces that nutrient. What I find out later then is that's all they eat. So they somehow magically focus on that one food, and then it kind of violates one of our principles of variety. So maybe now they get a lot of the nutrients in that single food, but they're missing out on nutrients that could be found in other foods. So usually what we try to do is we tell people, why don't you we give them some reference websites to look up sources for the nutrient in question, and then circle 5 to 10 foods that they like to eat, and then look back at the Rainbow Diet chart or ebook that we're producing, and then make sure you're getting those foods every day. So now you're getting all of your goals accomplished simultaneously. So you're getting, let's say, vitamin D in this example, but you're also getting other micronutrients that occur in nature.
Everybody needs a copy of the Rainbow Diet Chart. That's a great name. The Rainbow Diet Chart from Dr. Tom and Causenta. You can get a copy of the Rainbow Diet Chart. Text the word health to 72,000. If you want a copy of the chart, as soon as it's available for download, we'll let you know. Text the word health to 72000 if you're in the U.S. and Canada. You definitely need to have this Rainbow Diet Chart because it answers virtually all your questions about what to eat just by looking at it. And then by following that, you're positioning yourself for optimal health and optimal nutrients, and you're like ahead of the game. So text the word health to 72,000 if you're in the U.S. and Canada. That's the word health to 72,000. If you're outside the U.S. and Canada, international listeners can text the word health to +1 315 930-0300. This is the Ask Dr. Tom show, and rumor has it there's this thing called a virtual colonoscopy. Is a virtual colonoscopy using a CT scan an effective way of diagnosing colon cancer?
So first, I guess the question is a virtual colonoscopy an effective way of diagnosing colon cancer? And I think we should maybe start off, though, what's the difference between a regular colonoscopy and a virtual colonoscopy, and then I'll kind of lead into why one may be better than the other. So with a regular colonoscopy, typically a gastroenterologist will insert some sort of tube into the body, so through the rectum, further up into the colon, and they're going to be able to take pictures. And while they take pictures, they'll be able to see things like if there are polyps, and if they're small enough polyps, they'll be able to remove those polyps from the body. So not only can they see what's there, but they could take tissue samples or even remove something that shouldn't belong there or doesn't belong there. And a polyp is just basically a clump of cells. It doesn't necessarily have to be cancerous, but there's some thoughts that over time, if polyps are not or if they're ignored, that they can become cancerous over time. Now, a virtual colonoscopy is typically done with imaging where there's nothing inserted in the body. So let's say if you use some form of an X-ray or CT scan device, you're going to see what's inside the body and identify areas like polyps or cancerous masses, but then you're not going to be able to do anything to remove them. So it's kind of like having a picture. You can't go inside the picture and remove the structures that you want to remove. So generally, virtual colonoscopies are less expensive. So they make a good screening tool, and insurance companies may be more likely to cover them than a CT scan. Or rather a colonoscopy. And so you have some different concerns there. Like if you have a really high family risk for colon cancer, based on previous generations having colon cancer, then you might say, let me do a colonoscopy. So if there is something there, they could remove it. So if you did a virtual colonoscopy and something is found, you would then have to follow up and do another procedure. If you did a colonoscopy, if something is found, they may be able to treat it on the spot. So depending upon expense, insurance coverage, timing, family history, there's different ways of looking at this. So you can find things with a virtual colonoscopy, like you can find cancer and polyps with that. So it's not that it's not useful, but then once you find it, you still have to do something else. And so that's where the colonoscopy directly may be a more strategic advantage.
Good stuff. Ask Dr. Tom, and we're talking with Dr. Tom, Dr. Thomas Incledon, and he is helping us sort of navigate the very scary waters of some of the worst cancers imaginable, and today's is colon cancer that we're talking to. You mentioned as we're talking about this virtual versus regular colonoscopy, you mentioned polyps. What Dr. Tom, what are polyps, and should people be worried about polyps?
So polyps is basically a clump of cells, and I would say it is a concern from the perspective of until you know what's there, you don't know what you're dealing with. So if I said, hey, I got a mass in my body, the first thing people are thinking about, oh my God, it's cancer, but it doesn't necessarily, sometimes it could be benign tissue. And if we were to scan everyone in the world, we're going to find lots of people have masses that they're not a threat to their health. They're just a clump of cells that are there for whatever reason. So generally speaking, the reason why we recommend colonoscopies is because we know colon cancer, once it gets to stage 4, it's a pretty serious thing, and the success rate is not good for treating that. So in order to keep people from getting to that place where it's very dangerous to their life, you want to do screening things and find what's there. So you get like a colonoscopy, you see some polyps, you get them removed, or at least they can take small biopsies of specimens collected and then send that to a pathology lab for diagnosis and say, hey, it's not that serious, or hey, this is real serious. And then while it's more of a minor threat to your health, you can get treatment and then basically move forward from there so that you're healthier. But if you don't get the regular screening, you won't even know you have polyps, and then you won't even know what to do, if they're something that are serious or not. So the polyps can be serious, and they may require attention, which ties all the way back into just get regular screening.
Early detection, early screening makes sense. It's better to know what you're dealing with, and it's also better to be eating and preparing ahead of time to be healthy. So if you want a copy of the Rainbow Diet Chart, or you'd like copies of any of these shows or segments to share with loved ones, or you have a question for Dr. Tom, you can text any of you can text your question, or you can get a copy of that chart by texting the word health to 72,000. On your mobile device. That's the word health to 72000 in the U.S. and Canada. If you're outside the U.S. and Canada, you can text the word health to +315 930-0300. We're taping the Ask Dr. Tom show. You can subscribe to that at askdrtom.com. If you know somebody who has a health concern, whether it's a cancer concern or perhaps or diagnosis, or maybe it's somebody who just wants to have high levels of achievement. Dr. Tom works with MLB athletes, NFL athletes, NHL athletes, C-level executives that just want to perform better. You can find out more at Causenta.com. That's CAUSENTA.com. And there's an application there. You can set up a free call and find out if there's a fit. I have a little bit more time. Do you have time for us to talk a little bit about cervical cancer, Dr. Tom?
Sure.
Okay, great. So we did colon cancer. What we do is we like to live stream this recording and our taping, and then we slice and dice and turn these into videos and episodes of podcasts and all sorts of stuff. And so we're going to jump ahead to another unfortunate cancer killer. And as Dr. Tom pointed out with colon cancer, it seems to unfortunately favor men somewhat. Obviously, cervical cancer is a big concern for women. And so I'm looking at some of these articles here. Less than a third of women could confidently recognize cervical cancer symptoms. So, Dr. Tom, what are some symptoms that women should be watching out for with regard to cervical cancer, and maybe which women should be watching out for those?
Sure. So a couple of comments about the symptoms of cervical cancer. One is that it occurs in less than 200,000 women. The significance of that is you're going to have less people talking about it. So there'll be less awareness because just the conversations, are going to be they're going to be on other topics. It seems to hit women around the age of 19, and then it increases, but it can occur in women after the age of 60. So it's not like only one age group gets it. It's something that women are pretty much can be at risk for it throughout their lifespan. The symptoms that women get, mostly pain from intercourse or abdominal pain or some sort of pelvic pain. You might even say groin pain, and the pain, though, may come and go, so may not be so obvious initially that it's cancer-related. There might be another event that happened in someone's life, and they're thinking it's connected to that as opposed to cancer. As things progress, you may see menstrual irregularities, or you may see there's fatigue and weight loss and nausea. And my experience so far is that the women that we tend to see, by the time they come to us, they're pretty much, stage 4. So meaning the cancer has spread past their cervix and gone around their whole body. I remember when I was in high school and when I first started college, I met 2 women, different high school, different college, that had a cervical cancer. At the time, I didn't even know what that was. And so it was hard for me to wrap my head around how does someone that looks so healthy on the outside, have a stage 4 cancer on the inside. Just doesn't fit. It'd be like someone telling you something and you're looking at a photo and the photo doesn't represent what they're telling you. It's kind of hard to process it all. So what I learned from that experience is that, wow, it's really, scary for a woman because these were people that were working out and were healthy, and they still got cervical cancer. So the symptoms, it's something that ties back into, early detection and screening. So for women, this would mean seeing, a gynecologist and getting routine exams to make sure that, everything is still going in a healthy direction.
This is Ask Dr. Tom, and we're talking about cervical cancer, how to prevent cervical cancer, and what you should know about it. We're going to get to some rumor has it questions that have been sort of bandied about and passed around so we can see if there's any truth to these. Birth control and cervical cancer. Some women, even young women that aren't sexually active, may be on birth control for reasons of comfort or regulating their periods and things like that. Is there a connection between birth control and cervical cancer?
So if we look at studies, I guess the question is there a relationship between, I would say, the early onset of sexual activity and cervical cancer? And what I would tell you is that around the world, what the data is showing is that when you start having sexual activity at an earlier age, and you have also multiple partners, there's an increased likelihood for the spread of different viruses and different STDs, and that does increase the likelihood of cervical cancer later on in life. Now, when you were saying birth control, were you thinking about medications, in that context, like different drugs that women may take, like estrogens and stuff? Or
Specifically the pill.
Okay.
Obviously, people do take the pill to prevent pregnancy, but
Sure.
some young ladies take the pill because it maybe helps regulate their period, and so they're not sexually active, but they're taking the pill. Is there any correlation between the birth control pill and cervical cancer?
Yeah, so that'd be a tougher one to answer, because normally we think of cervical cancer linked to strongly linked to pathogens, not necessarily to certain hormones. But what I will say this though is that the problem with birth control pills is that oftentimes a woman is taking a chemical structure that does not naturally occur in the body. And so there's a general concern that that foreign chemical may create problems somewhere in the body. So if not cervical cancer, maybe another issue. I would say that it would depend on the exact chemical. So if someone took ethinyl estradiol versus some other form, one may have a greater risk for cervical cancer than another. There's too much variability, I think, in birth control compounds, because some may have progesterone in it and some may not, or progestin. So it'd be a tougher one to look at. In other words, so what I would do is, if it was, let's say if you brought in, so you bring in a daughter to me and you say, hey, what's the risk of this happening later on? I would look at the medication with our physicians, and I would then run some queries in our databases to see, does that specific medication have an increased relationship with cervical cancer? And then let's just assume it did, for argument's sake. Then our backup plan would be, let's find a better alternative for this young woman that is safer, that doesn't increase her risk for cervical cancer.
Makes sense. That's why we asked Dr. Tom. This is Ask Dr. Tom. You can subscribe to the podcast at askdrtom.com. If you'd like a copy of any of the materials that we've talked about during this segment or any other segment, or you want a copy of the segment, or you want a copy of the Rainbow Diet Chart to help you eat a wide variety of colorful micronutrient-rich foods, easy for me to say, just text the word health to 72,000. That's health to the number 72,000 on your mobile phone in the United States and Canada. International listeners and viewers can text the word health to +315 930 0300. We have a couple of rumor has it cervical cancer oriented questions for Dr. Tom. This is where sometimes these things come up among family conversations. You've heard it. You've maybe seen it in a chat room or in a Facebook group, and people say that, oh yeah, this is the case. And you want to know, is that true? If you have one of those questions, you can send them to Dr. Tom too by texting health to 72,000. Here's one of them. Rumor has it cervical cancer is linked to losing your virginity at a young age. Actually, you already covered that one. I'm sorry, I sort of skipped ahead. Rumor has it cervical cancer will affect my ability to give birth naturally. Is that true?
So can cervical cancer affect a woman's ability to give birth naturally? And the answer is it can. It's a really complex, situation, because if a woman isn't pregnant and she gets cervical cancer, and let's say there's surgical procedures performed and certain tissues are removed, because if the cancer spread into the uterus or to some other areas of the woman's body, let's say reproductive tissues, then clearly that's going to impact her ability to have a baby later on. If it hasn't spread, she gets, let's say, gets pregnant, and then during the course of a pregnancy, then determines she has cervical cancer. That's a very complex scenario, because The doctors are obviously going to want to save the mother, save the baby, but there's still the obligation to treat the mom like like an oncologist. The responsibility of the oncologist is to treat the disease in that woman, but the responsibility of the gynecologist is to have a healthy pregnancy. So that's where you need a team of docs that are discussing and talking about, how do we create a win-win for everyone? So we treat the woman's cancer, and we also make sure that the baby is born in a healthy way with minimal threat to either the mom or the fetus or the baby ultimately.
This is Ask Dr. Tom with Dr. Thomas Incledon. Dr. Tom is the founder and CEO of Causenta Wellness and the Causenta Cancer Treatment Center in Scottsdale, Arizona. And we are talking today about cervical cancer. Now, I think this probably will require some deeper conversation and maybe even another episode to dive into HPV and the risks and things people need to know, and perhaps we can share a greater detail with people if they want to get like a PDF or a download, and they can get more information by asking for it. If you'd like some specific information about HPV or some links to some of the materials Causenta has come up with, that's a good opportunity to get it if you text health to 72,000. But just as a general, and I think we should come back to HPV and dive in with more stuff, but people speak about cervical cancer and HPV. Is there truly a link between what is HPV, and is there a link between HPV and cervical cancer?
Okay, so the question is there a link between HPV and cervical cancer? And the simple answer is absolutely. But there's also links between HPV and other types of cancer in the body as well. So let me kind of now add a little bit more detail to that. HPV stands for human papillomavirus. And there's a lot of different variations of this virus. There are various genetic tests. So a gynecologist may collect some specimens from a woman during a gynecological exam and then send those specimens out for testing. But there's also saliva tests that could be done in the mouth for HPV. And there's other ways that we could test people for HPV. The significance of knowing the specific type of HPV someone has is you could then look and see what's the best option for treatment of that form of HPV. There are different vaccinations that are available. There's definitely recommendations in certain countries for younger people, younger women, to get vaccination to reduce the likelihood of an HPV-induced cancer. Given all the controversy surrounding, immunizations and vaccinations and things like that, that's probably another topic for another show. But what I would say is that in terms of HPV, it's one of those viruses that's been linked to head and neck cancers, and it's also been linked to cervical cancers, and I'm sure there's going to be more cancers showing up over time. But keep in mind, it's different versions of the virus, so it's not like it's one thing. There's maybe 50 or more different HPV viruses that have already been identified. What I will say is that it appears that some natural substances like green tea and curcumin and quercetin have the ability to interfere or inhibit the virus from spreading and replicating. So this would be, kind of gets back to people that eat colorful fruits and vegetables, or a diet with a lot of color. They'll be getting those natural substances and indirectly inhibiting viruses. There's even data that, like when you peel an orange or a grapefruit or a lemon or a lime, there's like that white undercoating of the skin, but it's still on the fruit. There's interesting data that skin has certain bioflavonoids, and those bioflavonoids, generally speaking, have an antiviral action. More of the data or more of the studies I look at things as far as those bioflavonoids versus herpes viruses. But there's data showing that it has application against a variety of viruses. And my approach or my thoughts would be whether or not it specifically inhibits HPV, it's still healthy overall for the body, eating some of that stuff. So people will say, well, do I need to eat the white part underneath, this grapefruit or this orange? Doesn't taste so good. Well, then you could just throw that in a blender and make a smoothie or a little puree and drink it so it doesn't taste as bad. Like, in other words, there's a workaround where you could get it naturally and then get the results and the benefits, but not have to necessarily deal with a taste issue.
Dr. Tom, this is Ask Dr. Tom, and this is where we ask Dr. Tom questions. That's pretty much all the questions I have. If you have a question for Dr. Tom and you'd like him to answer, or maybe you want a copy of the Rainbow diet chart, you can text the word health to 72,000, text the word health to 72000 in the U.S. and Canada. You can send in your question. You can get a copy of that chart. Or if you're outside the U.S. and Canada, text the word health to +315 930 0300. Dr. Tom, we talked about colon cancer. We talked about cervical cancer. Side note, we have done other episodes about HPV, about the HPV vaccine. And if you would like to listen to any of those, they're at askdrtom.com. You can listen through iTunes or Stitcher or SoundCloud.
So if you or a loved one has been diagnosed with cancer and you're looking to get help, I strongly encourage you to go to Causenta.com and fill out the form at the bottom of the page and find out for yourself how we can help you. After working with a lot of athletes over the years and dealing with health issues and injuries and seeing how they approach their health, we learned a lot. Does it make sense that everyone is saying the same thing? Where's the unique approach? Where's the differences in how to look at a human being and suggest something different that might help them?
This is a very individualized, customized type of treatment. This is not going to be the same thing every day. This is not cookie cutter. This is not about having a plan in place before you ever get here, just based on your label.
When we're working with patients, it should be a patient-centered model. So the patient's best interests are at heart.
This is not a one-size-fits-all. This is, you come in, we measure all aspects that we can possibly measure, and then we customize and tailor it directly for you. And we're constantly looking at what is the latest, most efficacious or effective way of treating those disease states.
I love working for Causenta because I see myself as a cutting-edge physical therapist, and Causenta has all the world's greatest technology under one roof.
I've been told that there's nothing they can do, and ultimately they have exhausted their options. At that same time, within 24 hours, our staff, our doctors come together and come up with a plan for that same person.
To me, it's a very personal relationship, and I have been given the gift and the power and the wisdom to help them, and there's no better life than that.
And we look for elements in the people that we hire that will translate out to a better patient experience when they walk through the door.
So we don't really even see the patients as patients, they're family.
There is life, there is newness going on in Causenta that is forward thinking, and I'm telling you what, this is probably the most exciting thing you'll ever see.
It's about facilitating an environment of learning, and it's learning for the patient, it's learning for the patient's body, it's learning for the patient's environment. This is more about being part of a system that's very much invested with each individual.
My name is Jennifer Grantham.
My name is David Schultz.
Hi, I'm Larry Hellman.
I'm Dr. Stephen Iacoboni.
My name is Dr. Matthew Zanis.
I'm Dr. Christy Anderson.
My name is Thomas Sinkledon, and I'm the Chief Scientific Officer. Welcome to Causenta. So if you or a loved one has been diagnosed with cancer and you're looking to get help, I strongly encourage you to go to causenta.com and fill out the form at the bottom of the page and find out for yourself how we can help you.